Alright, what's going on, guys? For the last 3 years, gamers have been hard at work picking apart the lore of Elden Ring, probably more so than any other Fromsoftware game that I can remember. And that's due not only to the immense popularity of the game itself, but how well the world within that game is crafted. Because I don't think it's a stretch to say that Elden Ring does background lore in a more coherent way than any of Fromsoftware's past titles. And that's understandable, since much of that was written by George R.R. Martin. And so Elden Ring's world has been very well understood by the people who have sought out that lore. However, all of that is about to be turned on its head, thanks to the announcement of Elden Ring Nightreign, in one very specific aspect of the original trailer: the fact that the Elden Ring universe, at least in this game, will be crossing over with Dark Souls. If you happen to miss the centipede demon at the beginning of the trailer, then there's absolutely no chance that your brain didn't get scrambled when you saw the revelation of the Nameless King. And if you chose to dig deeper on the website, you might have seen this image of players fighting the Duke's Dear Freya from Dark Souls 2. So we have something from all 3 Dark Souls games here, and the question is any of this actually canon? How is Fromsoftware going to explain this, and will Elden Ring lore ever be the same? Well, I'm going to try to answer those, but as we dive into things today, if you want to stay up to date on all things Elden Ring Nightreign, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and now let's begin. The best place to start when tackling this conversation is by taking a look at what the director of the game himself had to say about this exact topic. In a recent interview with IGN, they asked about what the story of this would be and how it ties into the original Elden Ring work, to which Junya Ishizaki, the director, had this to say: "We'd like fans to think of Nightreign as an Elden Ring spin-off first and foremost. The story is completely separate and parallel to the world of Elden Rings. If you had to tie it in some way, we had the events of the Shattering in the original game. After the events of the Shattering, this is a completely separate branch of the Elden Ring story. We understand that there's a great deal of emotional attachment to the story of Elden Ring that a lot of fans have, so we didn't want to encroach on that too much. We wanted it to coexist with the existing story, and for players both familiar and new to enjoy both of these stories separately." Okay, so from that question and answer right there, it sounds like they're talking about plot, specifically the journey of the Tarnished in Elden Ring. Now, as we know, in Nightreign we are not playing as Tarnished, but instead Nightfarers. So while the plots will not overlap, it's possible that the lore might still be under the same umbrella of Elden Ring's world. And we also saw in another interview that Miyazaki himself signed off on the idea of the crossover with Dark Souls. So here's where it stands explicitly according to the directors. While yes, this is technically a different timeline than the base game of Elden Ring, so the two plots will not intersect, this is not saying that Nightreign is not canon and that they will not be sharing the lore. First of all, we can say for a fact, Elden Ring Nightreign is built from Elden Ring lore. It takes place in the Elden Ring world, at least within the confines of its own game. So inevitably, in order to tell the story of Elden Ring Nightreign in the lore at least within that game, we are going to be pulling from existing lore established in the base game of Elden Ring. So let me show you some examples of how this could play out. It has been revealed that the main villain of Elden Ring Nightreign is an entity known as the Night King. Now, there is a very good chance that this Night King could be a figure mentioned in the base game in the Nox armor set, where the description describes that the Nox now live under a false night sky in eternal anticipation of the coming Age of Stars and their Lord of Night. Now, this was a pretty hotly debated topic in the lore community because that's all the game has to say about this Lord of Night. Many people thought this might be a reference to Ranni, given the Age of Stars connection, while others took this as a different entity altogether, and if they are correct, then perhaps it is this Night King from Elden Ring Nightreign. Another hotly debated topic of lore in the base game of Elden Ring was this statue in Malekith's arena in Farum Azula that shows a girl and 3 dogs beneath a very different take on the Elden Ring. This statue is never explained or even hinted at, but occupies its own page in the Elden Ring art book, so clearly it was meant to be important. Well, now in the Elden Ring Nightreign trailer, we have this take on 3 dogs that can morph into one, and although they don't look exactly like the ones in the statue, it's possible that these were built to tie into that mystery from the base game. So what I'm getting at here is that this could be true for all of the elements of Dark Souls that will appear in Elden Ring Nightreign, that even with these appearing in the game, we're still working with the same lore. Canon or not, it's not going to change how we explain Elden Ring Nightreign. But even if this does make Dark Souls canon, I think there will still be ways to explain it, because let's take a look at the Nameless King here. In Dark Souls 3, this is a 2-stage fight, with the Nameless King riding atop his dragon called the King of the Storm. This is the phase and form that we see in the Elden Ring Nightreign trailer, and in the shot as well it looks like you're fighting him in a storm. Well, as it turns out, there is a very specific mysterious figure in Elden Ring's lore known as the Storm Lord, who was once defeated by Godfrey. Another hotly debated topic in the lore community with no explanation. So all I'm saying is, it would be a very easy job to just name him the Storm Lord in Elden Ring Nightreign, and boom, there we go. There is the connection to the lore. Realistically, you wouldn't even have to change his name. You don't even have to flesh out a story that much. So I think there is an elegant way to do this without it being so simple as, oh, the Dark Souls universe is in fact crossing over. And that is one route we may see them take. Instead of a full crossover, they're renamed and given new lore to be a part of the Elden Ring universe. Now when it comes to the Centipede Demon and the Duke's Dear Freya, those could just easily be fodder bosses that are given new names. Now I think it would be much more fun if they do in fact do a full crossover. I always thought the joint universe theories are pretty entertaining, and I would love to see how wild some of those can get. Now ultimately, you have to look at Nightreign differently. As the director said, they don't want you to think of this as anything more than a spin-off. Nightreign is not trying to rewrite Elden Ring lore. It's not trying to change any of the established story. So when we end up analyzing Nightreign's lore, it doesn't actually matter if it's technically canon or not, until Miyazaki comes out and factually says that yes, all of this is actually happening in the Elden Ring universe, and we had planned this from the beginning, which I don't think is the case at all. Then it will just be fun speculation. I think the argument of canon or not canon misses the point. The intention with the holes in the original Elden Ring story was always to make us think and present ideas of our own. While yes, of course there is environmental and subliminal storytelling, and there probably is a lore bible somewhere, this is just my opinion, but I think Nightreign kind of falls somewhere in the middle of all that, where if you want to take all this lore in context of the pre-established base of Elden Ring, it's welcoming you to in the confines of that game, without, as he said, encroaching or overriding that past lore, which is why, and I'm going at this with the I think base, that these connections will likely find themselves in the parts of the lore of the base game that were not expanded upon or explained beyond 1 or 2 lines. That's just what I'm thinking, that's just what this kind of looks like to me, and I could be totally wrong about that. This could all be absolutely canon, or the total opposite, but I think one thing is for sure, we the fans and the lore enthusiasts are going to be taking this much more seriously than they intended. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm sure they welcome it in many regards, but at least for me when analyzing Nightreign's lore, I'm not going to be completely dismissing it, and I will absolutely be going at this with ideas of fun ways it could tie into the base game or cross over the universes, but I'll likely just keep those as exactly that, fun ideas. But what do you guys think? Do you want Elden Ring Nightreign to be fully canon? Do you want it to rewrite what we thought we knew about Elden Ring entirely? Or do you hate the idea of a Dark Souls universe crossover and will just be sticking to the lore of the base game? Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here. But with all that, I will catch you in the next one.